Let's jump right back into the things and let me introduce our next speaker, Sonia Jiménez. She's a director of data space technology at International Data Space Association. And she will be sharing how data spaces serve as enablers for secure and sovereign data. Let's welcome her.
Hi, hello, good morning, everyone. I'm very glad to be here. And yes, I'm going to explain how data spaces enable secure and sovereign data sharing. And this. I'd like to start with some facts and figures. This is a projection made by the European Commission back in 2018, when they estimated an increase of global data volume of 530% in 7 years, so up to 2025. And this would translate in $100 billion of business value through data sharing. And this is the key word, data sharing in key areas. So the key learning from this, if you want to get value from your data, you need to share it. But what's the reality that we are facing? The reality is that companies are only sharing 2% of the data they generate. And the main reason for this is because they don't trust each other. So this means that we need to talk. Here you have the first sentence of the EU Data Act. And I've highlighted some keywords. So data is a core component of the digital economy. The volume of data, as we've seen, is increasing exponentially, but most data are unused. And this is mainly due to low trust and technological obstacles. So out of this, we can identify these 4 challenges. So first, we need to build trust between partners in the data economy. But what does this mean? So what is trust in the digital economy, and how can this trust be measured and expressed? Second, we need to enable the usage of data by providing clear rules for data exchange, but also by enabling interoperability with standards. Third, we need to overcome technological obstacles. And we do this, again, by providing standards, but also by providing industry-grade software to be used. And the fourth one is simply no cloud is not an option anymore. And how do we do this? How do we build trust in data sharing? We need to keep the balance between keeping control of our data, but then generating value out of it. So staying in control, but sharing it, generating value and creating services out of that data. And we do this by enabling and preserving data sovereignty. Data sovereignty is defined as the ability of a natural or legal person to exclusively and sovereignly decide regarding the usage of data as an economic asset. When we talk about data sovereignty, there's no one solution that fits all. So we're talking about a continuum of data sovereignty, and depending on the use case that applies. So we go from the basics, so to say, so less complexity, we ensure interoperability, and we ensure interoperability by making sure that all the endpoints can talk to each other and can understand the data that's sent to one another. And we also need identity management. So even in this entry barrier case, we still need to be identifiable. We move one step further, so we start with traceability. So we need to make sure that we can trace what happens to the data once it's sent from one endpoint to the other. And we can ensure and there will be a proof of delivery of that data. With regards to identity management, we still need it, but maybe we require higher levels of security. Then we go to enforcement. So it's not only about making sure we have these contract agreements. We need to enforce it technically that this happens. And at the higher data sovereignty use case, then we find tamper protection for connector software. In all these cases, we need trust and certification to different degrees, depending on the level of sovereignty we want to ensure. And the basis for all of this is standardization, which is required in any case. This picture depicts the evolution of data spaces, or what we call the data exchange. So first we have one-to-one contracts. So this is basically two companies, they know each other, they sign a contract, they start sharing data. This works, we all know it, but it's not scalable. If we move to the middle, we have adoption and standardization, and we're creating close communities of few to few, so some partners that know each other, they sign some contracts also, and they send data, and they create their own ecosystem. This is a better solution, but we're still talking about, normally about partners that already know each other. So that's how they trust each other. What we want to move towards to is phase 3, the proliferation and adoption. And this is creating large ecosystems of many partners that don't need to know each other, but they can trust each other. And they can trust each other because there are rules in this ecosystem that everyone needs to adhere to. So this can be seen as a data space. What you see here is endpoints that are able to send and receive data. This case applies to manufacturing, but of course it can apply to any other domain. So you have at the bottom some endpoints, some factories, companies, sensors that are able to generate and send data. And then you have other partners that can be an IoT marketplace, other participants, other marketplaces, and so on. Good thing is, or what's important to mention is, the data stays where it is. So we're talking about a federated data architecture with no physical data integration. Okay, so data stays where it's produced, and then it's sent peer-to-peer. This is federated architecture. We have interoperability, so all these endpoints can communicate with each other, technical interoperability, but on top of this, all these endpoints are able to understand the data from each other. So we're talking about semantic interoperability. We ensure data sovereignty, as I mentioned, so every data provider gets to decide what happens to their data. Traceability, so we can see what happens to the data once it's sent out, how it's received, and all these participants can be trusted. And now let me introduce you the International Data Space Association, now that I introduced the concept of data spaces. So we are a neutral, non-profit, true global organization. And we have a clear goal. We want to create a global standard for trustworthy data sharing while realizing data sovereignty. We are not alone in this endeavor, so we partner with others that also share our vision, like, for instance, GaiaX, iShare, but also others. And we can already say proudly that we can showcase the first success stories based on the IDS assets, like Catena X, Mobility Data Space, or the Smart Connected Supplier Network. Some facts and figures. We were founded back in 2016. The founding parties came from research, politics, and business. We currently have more than 160 members from 31 countries in all 5 continents. We have partners that help us bring the IDS concepts to their local markets. So we have our hubs, many in Europe, also in Asia, and we recently inaugurated our Brazilian hub. We have a representation here. We work in research projects from the European Commission, more than 30 currently. And we can already showcase over 100 use cases that are based on the assets that we deliver. We are very proud to show this picture. These are the logos of our members. For the sake of space, we don't have them all 166 here. But yeah, we continue growing. The good thing, we're growing in different markets on the 5 continents, and we have many people contributing. We are an association, which means that everything we deliver, we produce, everything, all our assets, we deliver them together with our members. So we work together with our members, working groups, task forces, and they help us follow this vision and develop our assets. And what we bring to the table, it's hard to summarize it, but I think this slide shows it, gives a good overview. So we are known for our reference architecture model. Version 4.2 is currently available, and we are working on version 5.0. And this is like the basis, the framework for designing and implementing data spaces, mainly from the technical aspect. We have the recently published data space protocol, and this is the foundation for sovereign data sharing and interoperability and to manage the policies. certification that I will explain a bit more detail today. This is our mechanism to ensure all the participants in the data space can be trusted. We have the rule book, because when we talk about data spaces, it's not only about the technical aspects, which are of course very important, but there are also other aspects that need to be taken into consideration. And we are talking about policies, principles, and guidelines for governing the data space. And then open source repository. Everything we do it to share it for the common good. So we have a lot of documentation available on our website, and also many documents and specifications in the public GitHub repositories. The IDS is on its way to becoming a global standard. So from the bottom, you can see our assets. But then we have the first success stories. So Mobility Data Space, Catena-X, the others are based on our assets. So they are live data spaces that use our architecture. And then on top of this, we align with others. So we align our architectures and all our assets also with others that are working towards this definition and creation of data spaces. We have here Gaia-X, BDBA, MyData, Fireware, and so on. And so we want to bring this to global markets. That's why now we are very active also in Asia or in America, and also contributing to standards. So we are actively contributing to standardization committees and working groups to bring data spaces aspects to global standards. When we are talking about data spaces and data economy, we all know there are certain rules that we need to consider and that we need to enforce. And these rules can come from several angles. First of all, of course, we have the legal framework. So in every country, every market, they will have their own laws, their own rules that, of course, everyone needs to follow. I mean, this is mandatory. Then we have data spaces itself that might say, yeah, on top of this legal framework that's defined by the government, we have our own framework, we have our own rules for our data space, because the members agreed on certain rules and policies. These also need to be enforced. And then, as a participant of a data space, you may also say, okay, I stick to all these rules, but besides this, I also have my own. So I also want to be in control, so give data sovereignty for my data. So I'm also able to define my usage policies for my data. And what we do from the IDSA is we provide this technical framework to support data sharing and enforce all these different types of rules at the different levels. And we do this with a specific component that's called the data connector. And this data connector allows you to implement and enforce these usage policies. Here you have a picture with all the components of the IDSA. Might look a bit complex, but basically what we need for data sharing is participants. So at least we need 2 participants that are willing to send and receive data. So that's the first thing we have. What's important is that these 2 participants need to have a connector. So that's mandatory. So in order to send and receive data, they both need to have a connector, because this is the way that we can enforce and ensure data sovereignty. Okay, on top of this, we have other components that facilitate also, for instance, finding the users of a data space, and that would be the broker. So the broker is a catalog of metadata. So you can enter a data space and publish your metadata so that you can be found by others. And same thing, you can enter a data space and go to the catalog, to the broker, to see who's offering what type of data. We have other components for observability and traceability. That would be the clearinghouse. So every time a transaction happens, we can log that transaction. So for conflict resolution, for instance, we would go to the clearinghouse and make sure we check there's a log there for the transaction that we just made. We need to be identifiable, so we need an identity provider. So all these participants and their connectors need to be identifiable. So we work with digital identities. And then we have other components, like the App Store that allows to download and deploy applications inside the connector, so you can manipulate or change the data before you send it out. Or vocabulary. So for semantic interoperability, we may need, for specific domains, they have their own information models. So in order to ensure semantic interoperability, we also have a component for that. So as you can see, the connector is the main component. It's actually the only component that sends and receives the actual data. So all the rest work with metadata. And this connects participants in a data space. It has to be identifiable, so it needs to have a valid identity. And it can enforce these usage policies, so you can attach your usage policies to the data set. And it ensures trust through the IDS certification. Here you have the concept of data usage control. It's like going one step beyond access control. So first, I decide who can access my data, okay, based on some attributes. But then I decide, okay, once my data is accessed, what can happen to my data? What can be done with my data? And this is what's understood by data usage control. So I can say, yes, I can send it to you, but if you access it, I need to be informed, or you can only access it for 3 days, or any other usage policy that I want to attach to it. So going back to the connector, that is also the means to ensure these data usage policies are enforced. The specifications of the connector can be found in GitHub repositories. They are all public, so anyone can access them and could deploy a connector. But not anyone should be able to claim, I have an IDS connector that can be used in a data space. So in order to make sure that all these connectors that are ready to use are really developed and implementing according to our specifications, we have defined a certification scheme. So this certification scheme is based on 156 security criteria. And we have a combination of existing criteria from standards, so mainly the ISO 27001 and IEC 62443 for cybersecurity, also CSA Cloud Controls Matrix, and C5. So this would be criteria coming from standards. And then we have on the right-hand side our own IDS-specific criteria for the functionalities that the connector provides, like what I mentioned, data usage control, identity management, and so on. The criteria catalog, so we are very transparent, of course. They can be requested from our website. So to get ready for certification, you're able to see everything that's tested during the certification. So we offer 2 types of certification. Both are mandatory in an IDS-based data space. So first, the component certification, but also the operational environment certification. Also, the company that's running that component needs to go through an assessment to a certification. That's based on the ISO 27001. And here we check the trustworthiness of the physical environment, processes, and organizational rules. Also, in case of the component certification, since there may be different needs according to the use case, the data space, the participant, we offer 2 types of assurance levels. Entry level, assurance level 1. This is based on some testing in a tool that I will show in a minute, and on a questionnaire, and this is more for research testing purposes. In a real data space, in a live data space, we encourage assurance level 2. This is a third-party evaluation. So this is an evaluation facility that has undergone also a process to become an evaluation facility. They will conduct all the testing. And this brings a higher level of security into the certification. As preparation, we have this tool. This tool is also available for anyone. It's in a public repository in GitHub. And this tool is a setup of open source components. So we have some connectors, 2 connectors. We have a broker, identity provider. And we explain how to deploy it, but also how to bring your own developed connector and how to test it against all of the components. It's open source for also not for certification purposes, for anyone who also wants to start maybe defining or implementing a data space. This can also be considered as a minimum viable data space because it's already a setup of components that are up and running. All the information regarding certification, plus all of our assets, can be found in our website. Also, the reference testbed can be found in a GitHub repository, public repository. The criteria catalogs also can be requested from our website. And anything regarding to the certification scheme, also how evaluation facilities become evaluation facilities. So what's the process? What are the rules of the different bodies that take place or that contribute to certification? Everything is transparent. Everything can be found in our website. So that's it for the certification. Here I would like to summarize a little bit what we do. It's complex because there are many things, but I will try to explain. So from the bottom, what we call our assets, the IDS concepts, this is what we develop together with our members. So the reference architecture model, the certification and the testbed, data space protocol, the rule book, also a knowledge base. So this is what we work on together with our members. We bring this to the ecosystem. We align with others. So we align our architecture, our assets with other players of this ecosystem, like you might have heard of Fireware, iShare, they're also here, or My Data, Gaia X, and so on. We promote open source. So we have IDSG, where we have our components, also the Eclipse Foundation and Fireware. So we make sure everything we do, it's open source, can be found by anyone. Certification, I already mentioned, we already have the first success stories, so first certified connectors this year. We have some success stories, so some live data spaces that are based on the IDS architecture, IDS assets, and standardization, because as I said, our goal is to bring this to a global standard. So we want to be the global standard for secure and sovereign data sharing. So we work together with major standardization committees. And last but not least, we are very happy that we have already so many members, but we're always happy to welcome new members. So if what I explained to you sounded a bit interesting and you want to know more, you can always reach out to us. We will explain the benefits of becoming a member, of joining us in this journey. And that'll be from my side. So thank you very much for your attention. I'll be very happy to take any questions. I see we have still some minutes left. So yeah, I don't know if they will give you a microphone. Yeah, OK, I think microphone is coming.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. So on the staging slides where you say about the level of progress on this technology on data sharing, you give, at least my impression is that you talk about a decentralized network for sharing data. But in the other technical slide, you say, hey, I have a centralized identity provider. So how do you balance that between having a decentralized platform, but at the same time, how do you control the identity, and who is going to be then the orchestrator of all the identity and security around this architecture?
Let me think here. Yeah. Thank you. Very good question. Yes, so you are right. When we talk about a federated, decentralized architecture, we mean that the data stays where it is. So we don't need to send the data somewhere where it's stored and then sent out. It's not a platform, data lake, whatever. That's correct. You're right. Now for identity provider, we have a component service provider that provides the identities, because we work with industry-proven X509 certificates for now. In RAM 5, we are also exploring verifiable credentials. So you wouldn't have these centralized identities. So you will have a decentralized approach for identities. But this is current situation. So right now, this is based on X509 certificates, industry proven. We are exploring verifiable credentials, so decentralized identities as well. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. Yes, there are several data regulators, okay, worldwide, doing their own data sovereignty regulations. Okay, would like to know if you have already discussed it with them and got some feedback from them about what your kind of standard that you are proposing.
Yeah, we are very aligned to everything that happens within Europe. I don't know if you have some in mind, and we also have
Middle East, China, Russia.
Yeah, we have. Okay. China, we have our own task force for China, so we have already members there. We have a hub in China, a competence center in China, so we're aligned with them. We are aware of the specific rules, so to say, China. So yes, we are aligning with. What we do is global, is international. So it's not that we adapt it to every market. So it's like we're going to create a standard. But we need to understand the reality of the different markets, and that's why we have our hubs as well. So yeah, we're very aligned in this market. So Japan, Malaysia, we have hubs. We are also in contact with the World Economic Forum, because they also defined and they are aware of other rules. So yeah, we tend to collaborate with anyone out there that shares our vision and is working towards the same direction.
What about Middle East? You are also...
We don't, I would say we don't have any members yet in the Middle East that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no more questions, so you have more questions. I forgot to say, we have a test bed, so in the test bed area with a very nice use case for agriculture, so you will see some wine and some plants. So feel free to come afterwards, and in case you come up with some questions.
Okay, I have a next one. My understanding is at the same time that you're defining the standards like an organization like IEEE or W3C do, but you also wanted to get involved in the certification process. Is that correcting my assumption?
Yes, but that's, yeah.
And then this more or less creates like a barrier. For example, I would say for like startups, if they want to develop technology on top of your standards, how do you see this relation between you being the creator and at the same time, creating, in the end, like a barrier for companies to say, I wanted to use your platform, but I wanted to create my own technology stacking on top of your standards?
Okay. As I said, everything we produce is available for everyone. Okay, so there's no barrier there. So anyone that's interested can join us, and then we would support them, and they would be able to talk to other members that have gone through the same process. With regards to certification, what we believe is that we need some criteria, because otherwise anyone can claim, I have an IDS connector, and you go to a live data space and maybe there's a security breach because you didn't develop your connector correctly. So in this, since we say we want to ensure trust, we don't see any other way to ensure trust if we don't make sure that all the components have been developed correctly and they meet our criteria. That's why we have also the entry-level certification that should make life easier for startups, for instance. But certification is mandatory. Yeah. We're currently working, I don't want to go into details, on certification 2.0, so there will be changes, but it's a cornerstone for us.
Good morning, or good day right now. So very interesting topic. One question I have is, how do you see the practice of data management and data governance in terms of the processes itself, or in terms of, let's say, data management platforms? How do you see it changing as this is adopted, this approach?
I think there's a big change in the concepts. I think first we need to adopt the peer-to-peer idea. So the thing is, I keep my data. I don't need anyone to process it for me and send it elsewhere, so I get to keep my data. When we come into the picture is in the moment of sending and receiving data. So there are different ways how you would process your data and prepare it to be shared. That's not part of our architecture. Okay, so that can be very different from company to company. So we say, okay, once the data is ready, we ensure that you're going to keep your sovereignty, you're going to apply usage policies, you're going to be in a safe ecosystem. That's the thing. But I think changing from centralized approach to decentralized, I think is a big shift, for many companies. And I think time's over, but as I said, we have a test bed, so I'll be also happy to take more questions there. So thank you very much.